Hey, my name is Jennifer Howard. I'm the owner of Facets Relational Care, and today we're going to do a video called How to Make It Work with Enneagram Type 8, which is where I discuss different things that you can do if you're in a relationship with someone that identifies as 8 on the Enneagram to help improve your relationship and your communication and just to make it a little bit more functional overall, okay? So, things that you can do if you love someone that's a type 8, ways that you can make that relationship better. I would say, as an overarching statement, just something to keep in mind throughout all of these points, I guess like the common denominator, the quality that you're going to have to make all of these points work, is that you're going to have to be, I'm going to use a phrase, I just made this up, a self-fortified person, okay? And I say that to you because I've referred to 8s in previous videos as the unstoppable force, right? You've heard the expression, when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Well, whether or not there's an immovable object isn't to my point today, but 8s are definitely the unstoppable force on the Enneagram. My cell phone is the unstoppable cell phone as text messages just continually pour in. The world would not survive if I didn't have a cell phone. I'm convinced. Anyways, so you're going to have to be a very self-fortified person because 8s have a ton of energy and they just bowl over life. And they are going to bowl over you on complete accident. They have absolutely no idea that they're doing it and it's not intentional, but they're going to do it. And you need to understand that if you approach them about that and tell them that it makes you uncomfortable or that you don't like it, they don't understand how to just stop doing that. In fact, they're probably for a little while not going to have any idea what you're talking about. Like what do you mean I'm bowling you over with my energy? Like, what do you mean I'm bossy? What do you mean I move 10, at 100 miles an hour and you haven't even had time to catch up to the first thing I did? What are you talking about? I don't know what you mean. You know what I mean? That kind of goes over their head at first, I think. It takes a lot of self-reflection if you're an 8 to see that you have that kind of energy and that you're just throwing it out onto the world every day, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing. You just want to make sure if you're an 8 that you're curtailing that and, expressing that within appropriate boundaries. And if you're in a relationship with an 8, then you need to just make sure that you're someone that knows how to draw your line in the sand and maintain it. You know what I mean? Because you're going to need to do that. It's really good, I think, when you're in a relationship with an 8 to be a very self-fortified person anyway, to know what you believe, why you believe it, to be very, very firm in what you think, what you want, those sorts of things, because oftentimes with type 8, it's like if they sense that you're just not entirely sure about your own position, then at that point it's like they don't really have any reason to take you seriously. You're not even taking yourself seriously, so why should they take you seriously? So you really have to be someone that's very firm in what you think, what you want, those sorts of things, and you need to be very direct in your communication style with them. 8s, by and large, they tend not to appreciate people that I don't know, pussyfoot around the issue. If you'll excuse the crudeness of the expression, they like people that can tell me what you want, tell me what you need me to do. They have respect for that because that gives them a direction, that gives them a point of action that they can take. Remember that 8s are first and foremost action-oriented types, okay? They are what we call instinct dominant. So they go through life just doing, and then they think about how they can keep doing, and their feelings are repressed. They're not using their emotions, their ability to their relational skills, in other words, to get things done. Everything is just what can I will to change and how can I strategize to keep that going. Do you know what I mean? So anyways, they appreciate a very direct approach. They're not going to take you as seriously, if they take you seriously at all, if you cannot speak to them in an intelligent way. And if you are not direct about what you want, what you need, they need to know those things. Don't be scared to tell them. Tell them. One of the benefits, I think, to being in a relationship with an 8 is that they would prefer brutal honesty over you trying to be nice to spare their feelings. 8s already kind of have issues with people anyway. They're there's always this unspoken belief that, this person could be trying to take advantage of me. I don't know if I can trust them with my emotional side, that kind of a thing. And so those those things exist in relationships too, until they get to the point that they know that you're not that sort of person. So when you speak to them in a very direct way, that helps them to feel more reassured that you're someone that they can trust. So it benefits everybody. You know what I mean? It kind of gains you that, you get like an inch closer in that circle. You know what I mean? In my video, I did a video introductory to type 8 and what that's all about. And I talked about the circle, and how, you're in it or you're out. And sometimes the 8s don't even realize they're doing it, but you're in it or you're out. And when you can be very direct, and when you can say what you need to say, even if it's unpleasant, in a direct fashion, that's easier for them to take than if you're trying to do all this nice stuff like, oh, I don't want to hurt your feelings, and just say what you need to say. Now, with that being said, I don't know if you're like me, and I tell you guys the mistakes that I've made with these types in the past because they're valuable lessons, and I don't want you to make the same mistakes, because I sometimes have approached in the past, when I was first learning the Enneagram, different types in ways that I thought were helpful because I didn't yet fully understand the nuances of that type. And type 8 is one of the ones that I had at the very beginning, probably the worst time communicating with, just bar none. The only other type that was even remotely close was type 1, and even then, I could make it work with type 1 because I understood the communication style. It was closer to my own. Type 8 is a whole different world in terms of communication for me. And one of the mistakes that I found that I made early on is that I assumed that because I could speak to them in a direct fashion, that it meant that they could handle my unfiltered emotions. And so this is what I want to say. If you're going to be in a relationship with an 8, yes, speak to them directly. Be very forthright about what you want, what you feel, what you think. But at the same time, do not be abusive and don't make it personal. I thought that it was okay to come in and say, I don't want to spend any time with you right now because you're being a huge asshole. That was not an appropriate thing to say. Yes, it was very direct, and it's absolutely how I felt, but that was not an appropriate way to say it. I could have been direct in a respectful fashion. So I don't know, it took me a while to figure that out. I just don't want you guys to make the same mistake, so I tell you that now. So treat them like human beings. They are human beings. You know what I mean? I think it's easy sometimes because 8s seem so impenetrable, and they seem so invincible, and they just kind of seem like nothing phases them. And I think if you're not an 8 and you know an 8, sometimes maybe you're leaning on their strength for so long, and you're leaning on their competency for so long, that you begin to think that they can just take all your crap, or that they're okay taking all your crap. To be fair, yes, maybe they can, but they don't want to. Nobody wants to take your crap when you're having a bad day or you can't handle your own emotions. Nobody wants to take that. Nobody deserves to. You wouldn't want to take it. So treat them with the same emotional respect that you would want to be treated with, is all I'm saying. So be direct, but be respectful, please. Very important for type 8. As I just mentioned, if you are in a relationship with type 8, understand that you are in a relationship with someone that has, in my opinion, some of the most amazing internal strength that I have ever seen. It astounds me again and again, beyond words. The tremendous amount of just weight and responsibility that 8s can carry on their shoulders for years and years and years. And I think what's even more profound to me outside of that is it's like they shoulder their own life without any help. They don't ask for help from anybody. And you know what? If they come along beside someone that's having a hard time, and depending on the 8, it depends on your level of health, because some 8s are kind of like, oh, you're weak, you deserve to to die, or whatever. And other 8s are like, if they've developed kind of that inner compassion that they're capable of, they see the weaknesses and the responsibilities and the things that other people can't shoulder, and it's this tremendous amount of compassion comes out of them, and so it's like they pick up your burdens too. And so 8s become very quickly the people who are just, they're dealing with their own life problems, and yet they make time for you when you want to come to them and talk about your problem, or if you need help with this, or it is amazing to me how much of their energy that they still have left to donate to you, you know? And again, that tends to be with more developed eights, but the potential for that is definitely there within every eight. And so I would say to you, understand that you are in a relationship with someone who is just, I almost want to say cantankerously strong. You know, I don't know if that's necessarily the exact way to put it, but I think it's technically applicable, you know. So you're in a relationship with somebody that's like that. Appreciate that and be very, very thankful for it. I don't know if we realize how much less we would be capable of doing if it weren't for the eights that we have in our lives that basically hold the ship together when it's falling apart. You know what I mean? And they do. But in the midst of appreciating that inner strength, do not take advantage of that. Don't assume that just because, again, don't assume that because they seem impenetrable and they seem invincible and they seem, you know, stable in situations where everyone else wasn't. Don't assume that that means that they are stable. And you know what? Even if they are, guys, sometimes you just don't want to take on someone else's shit. Sometimes you just want to deal with your own shit, and and you're done. You're like, you know, I could help this other person, but I think I'd like to keep, you know, what's left of my energy to just do things for me that I just want to do. That may be the case for them. So be respectful of that. Don't assume that because they're in a relationship with you, they owe you that strength. Don't assume that they have to defend you, that sort of thing, that they have to protect you. Those are things, you know, strength and defense and protection and support. We tend to rely on the eights in our lives for those things. I know I do. All of the people that I know that know eights tend to do that, and I watch them do that, and I'm not entirely sure that they're even aware that they have that reliance there on that eight or those eights that's in their life, you know. But I think that we all tend to do it to some degree, and it's really not fair for that eight because, you know, they don't get up in the morning and ask to shoulder the world. They do it anyway because it comes naturally to them. But the point I'm trying to make is I just want you to know that they're humans and they have their limits too. They get tired just like you get tired. And sometimes I think they just like to chill out. I don't think they really want to spend all of their time conquering the entire world. Guys, it's exhausting. Even if you're an eight, you have limits, right? So be aware of that. Be respectful. When you put your problems on them, if they're tired, if they don't want to deal with it, or if they don't want to talk about it, or if they can't help you, just respect that and let it alone. You'll find your own answer somewhere else. I can assure you of that. You don't necessarily need them. So just be respectful of the fact that they are human and that they, you know, they just want to do stuff for them sometimes. And that's totally cool. They're allowed to. Mm-hmm. Thinking about some other things. I have like a list on that I made on the other half of my screen here, and I'm thinking about what points on this I really want to cover with my allotted time because I never get all of it done in one video. You guys know how I am. I'm also going to say this. All right, so you need to understand that typically speaking, with most eights, they are perhaps out of all of the types on the Enneagram, they are one of probably the top three, if not the most, I want to use the right word, the most apt to express their anger without restraint. It's pretty overwhelming, and that is exacerbated by the fact that they are ESTJ or ENTJ, if they are. Extroverted thinking in Myers-Briggs, I have found, tends to be a very explosive function. And so anytime you get an 8 that's got dominant extroverted thinking, sometimes even secondary extroverted thinking, ISTJ, you know, INTJ, sometimes, I mean, even then, it's kind of like, you know, whoa, where did that come from? So I would say just know that their anger can be very explosive and very fierce. They get really passionate about things. They're going to be very direct in confronting you. I used to work, I don't know if I told you guys, I may have. I used to work for a guy that was 8 with 7 ENTJ, and I he hated me from the beginning. He hated me. He actually was, I think, was the only person that said that he didn't want me hired because he hated me. He thought I was a sniveling little incompetent worm, which I think if you're an 8 and you don't know any better, that tends to be your opinion of most 6s, I think. So I understood. I didn't take it personally, but I thought it was kind of funny actually, because it was a pretty typical response for an 8 to have. But anyways, I learned very, very quickly working with him almost to walk on eggshells, which I know is sad to say, and that's not necessarily a healthy way to go about it. But he never directly got angry at me, but I watched how angry he would get at other people that were underneath of him, other subordinates. And the fact that the guy never got called into HR for the way he behaved to this day amazes me, because he would blow a gasket. I mean, it's not like he was calling people names or anything, but like screaming at the top of his lungs. He would haul you into his office and close the door, and everybody could still hear what was going on because he would scream so loud at you. I mean, nobody deserves to be yelled at like that, period, whether you're in the workplace or not. At least that's my opinion. Um, so, anyways, I learned really quick I needed to be careful with this person. And it's not just him. That's just one example that I'm throwing out there. But all of the 8s that I've ever known have had, they're cool for a really long time. So I don't want you to hear me say that you do one small thing and they just explode and they lose it. That's not the case, unless they have maybe been through, some kind of terribly abusive past, or something has happened to them that's causing that behavioral pattern to arise. But typically speaking, 8s have a very long fuse. Something will go and go and go and go and go and go and go, and then they're like, you know what? I'm done. You've crossed the line. And when that happens, I mean, man, oh boy, I don't want to be in the room when that happens. It's so overwhelming. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's I don't even know how to describe it to you. Every 8 will display it differently. Some common things that I have seen with 8s when they get to that point and they snap are, I've seen yelling, I've seen name calling, I've seen throwing objects, I have seen like initiating physical altercations. I have seen just all sorts of stuff. It escalates very, very quickly, and it tends to disappear as quickly as it came. So I guess that's a good thing. But just be aware of that. Don't take it personally, but make sure that you maintain your boundaries there. Like, don't take shit treatment from an 8 just because they're mad about something and they can't control it. That's their problem. You know what I mean? And they need to get their shit together. That's not your job. So don't stay and tolerate behavior that is abusive. You know what I mean? They need to learn how to express their anger in a relationally healthy way, whether they like it or not, or whether it makes sense to them. That's how relationships function. You know what I mean? They're going to have to get with the program. So I'm just saying, be a self-fortified person. I'm going back to that. You're going to have to be, you got to be able to, you have to be like Stonehenge, I think, to be in a very intimate, serious, long-term relationship with 8. I have found that in terms of like romantic relationships, this has just been my experience. I cannot think of one 8 that I have ever known whose romantic partner was not a 9. Sometimes it's a 9 with a 1 wing, sometimes it's a 9 with an 8 wing, but it's almost always a 9. And it makes sense to me that they would be naturally drawn to 9, because 9s, I mentioned in a previous video, I think when I did a video comparing type 8 and type 9, and it may have been that video, where I talked about how just on the Enneagram, 8s are the unstoppable force and 9s are the immovable objects. 9s are the Stonehenge of the Enneagram. They've been there forever. They're going to continue to be there. They don't move. They're rock solid. They don't seem intimidating because they're just kind of standing there holding their ground, but they're not going to move. They're not going to budge. You know what I mean? So I can see why, just in terms of natural chemistry, 9 tends to be the number that winds up with 8, because I think that 9s have that ability to just not be moved. You know what I mean? Not if you're not a 9, you could still have a relationship with an 8. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying that you're going to have to learn how to find that inner resolve within yourself, where you don't spend all of your time explaining yourself to the 8 that you're in a relationship with, because they don't necessarily need an explanation. You get to make your own decisions without explanation if you want to. But at the same time, you need to be able to stand there and be present and not move. Don't let them push you over with their anger. Don't tolerate behavior that you know you shouldn't be tolerating. You know what I mean? You're going to have to maintain that boundary with them. Boundaries. I almost feel like I need to dive into this idea a little bit more. Because eights tend to bowl over people very quickly, you need to know going into a relationship, whether it's a working relationship or if it's a family member, that compromise doesn't come easy for type 8. And I don't think that they realize that it doesn't come easy. With a type 8, it's kind of their way or the highway. And it's that's not like conscious thought. They don't think, oh, we're doing it my way, and if he doesn't like it, oh well. They don't think that. They just get up and they're like, I want to do this. Hey, let's go do this. Or they just go do it. And it turns out to be something that maybe was offensive to you or something that you didn't like, or maybe you're just unhappy with the fact that they didn't even ask what you wanted. And you tell them and they're kind of like, oh, yeah, sorry about that. I guess I didn't think about that. You know what I mean? It's that kind of a thing for them. So you need to, you may find if you're in relationship with 8 that you have to, in more than one instance, remind them that you're there and that you have your own opinion and your own desires and your own wants. And when they are prepared to receive those from you, again, communicate them in a very direct but respectful manner. Maintain that line if that's what you want, if that's what you think, because there's a very real possibility that there may be pushback. So stand there and defend what you said. No, this is what I want. This is what I tolerate. You're going to have to do a lot of the work if you want to get to a place where the two of you are compromising in your relationship, because that's not something that comes naturally for the 8. Now, I do want to say this. This is perhaps my most favorite thing about type 8. I have never been romantically involved with anyone that was an 8 on the Enneagram. Part of me, I'm married now to a 9, and part of me regrets that I never had that experience, because as I have gotten to know the 8s in my life, my friends and my family members that are 8s, and even people that I've worked with in the past that have been 8s, like, guys, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful things in the entire world is to watch how they love their significant other. I don't even know if I could put words to it to describe it. It's like, 8, they're interested in you and everything, and there's going to come a time for an 8 where they make the decision that you're worth the vulnerability that it's going to cost them to be in an intimate relationship with you. And it doesn't come easy. Okay. I've noticed the 8s that I have known have been really slow to kind of get to that point in a relationship. But guys, man, when they do, it is like some of the most touching shit I've ever seen. It really is. To watch an 8 take this person that they've been dating and thinking about for a little while, and they're weighing you and kind of trying to decide if you're going to be someone they can trust to get all the way in. And when they decide that you are, just the process of them taking you in, it's like it's kind of like you're their person. You know what I mean? A good example, uh, Grey's Anatomy. I hate that show. I cannot understand why anybody with a 3-digit IQ would like this show. But nonetheless, there's fandom. I don't know. I don't need to know. It's okay. Nonetheless, I tried to sit through 4 seasons and couldn't do it. And there is a great example of this is Christina Yang, who is an 8. Her and Meredith are best friends, and Meredith is a 6. And anyways, in that show, one of the things that I loved, one of the very few things that I loved, and this was actually probably one of the only 2 things that kept me watching the show, is because I loved just watching the relational dynamic between Christina and Meredith. And I think that that's a really great example of 8s when they love. You're in that circle, and even in that show, Christina refers to Meredith as her person. She would always say, "But you're my person." And it's almost like, if you can picture it, it's as if everywhere that they go in life, they've kind of got their arm up and you're like right there under their arm, and they're not going anywhere, and nothing's messing with you. And if something messes with you, then it's messed with them, and they're going to have to deal with them. You know what I mean? when an 8 loves you and when you've been taken in under that wing, especially in like, romantic situations, when you marry an 8, man, they're not perfect people, but I have to tell you, they will give their life defending yours, and they're not going to even think about it. No questions asked. No one's ever going to talk shit to you as long as they're alive. No one is going to treat you like some second class citizen. People are going to treat you with respect because you're theirs and they say so. You know what I mean? It's beautiful how protective they are and how supportive they are. And you know what, 8s inside, guys, I've always said that 8s are kind of like roasted marshmallows. I may have used this in a previous video, maybe not, it doesn't matter. And when I say an 8 is like a roasted marshmallow, what I mean is that, on the outside they're kind of like black and crunchy, and I don't know, they don't smell too appetizing, and if you don't know any better, it's kind of like, ugh, why would anybody want anything to do with that? I don't want to put that in my mouth. But what you don't understand is that if you can get through that outer shell, that hardened outer shell, inside, guys, 8s are like warm, gooey, sweet little teddy bears. Every single one of them is. And if you're an 8 and you don't think that applies to you, you're in denial. And that's just how it is. So I have never met an 8 that did not have somewhere in them the little gooey marshmallow center. And it's like when they fall in love, you are immediately absorbed into the gooey marshmallow center, and that outer protective casing envelops you, and you're now within the protection of the casing. And it's really intimate, I think, because it's just you and it's just them, and it's kind of this sweet relationship that 8s give to just one person. And that's another reason why they take 8s take faithfulness in a relationship very, very seriously. I have known 8s that have had their heart broken by people that they had committed themselves to long term, that had affairs or just decided, I don't love you anymore, and they up and left. And it kills me to watch the 8s that I know like hurt. I mean, devastating hurt. Guys, that's like one of the worst things you could do. I mean, first of all, if you're going to commit yourself long term to somebody, you better know for damn sure, I don't care what their Enneagram number is, that you want to be there for the long haul, because every human deserves that. If you're going to make the commitment, every human deserves for you to keep the commitment. 8s are no different, but I want to say that if you're going to make a commitment to an 8, you need to make sure that you're in it for the long haul. Make sure that you can handle the energy, that you're going to be able to be in that relationship, and that you're going to be able to contend with someone that just naturally rises and controls. You know what I mean? That you're going to be able to work with that long term, because, guys, do you understand that when an 8 gets married, even if they don't get married, if they're just in a serious relationship, like let's say you move in together and you're living together for 3 or 4 years, and then one day your person comes in and says, I just don't love you anymore, or I met someone else, or, you know, you suffocate me, or whatever it is that you say, and then you leave and you don't come back. Do you understand that an 8's deepest fear is that they're going to be taken advantage of emotionally, that they're going to let someone in there in the warm, gooey center, and that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to go in and take advantage of the warm, gooey center and turn around and leave. You know what I mean? And that's like the core fear. I feel so sorry. I mean, you don't have to stay in a relationship with anybody. Sometimes, guys, it doesn't work out, and it's everyone's responsibility, including an 8, to work through the emotional damage that comes from relationships that fall apart. So I'm not telling you that you're responsible for their emotional well-being, but what I'm saying is you can be responsible for your behaviors, and you can do that by just making sure that this is what you want before you commit to it. 8s would rather you do that, because again, look, if you're unsure, please say that. Don't tell them you're sure if you're not sure. That makes you like an untrustworthy person to them. You know what I mean? Don't do that. So say what you mean and mean what you say. That's a great rule to have if you're going to be in a relationship for type 8. They're not going to open up and put their heart. I don't care if they're a man or a woman. They're not going to open up and put their heart out for you. If you're not sure. So please be sure. You know what I mean? Anyways, those are just some points. Usual, you guys know what to do. Questions, comments, the bottom. So, thanks.